It is exactly 9 p.m. top of the hour, and you're just right on time for KUTV Primetime News. This, the day that the government, or rather the National Treasury, has actually delivered the budget, the first of its kind, a record of 4 trillion. And of course, there is some very key sectors, that is, we are calling them the winners and the losers. Remember, now the Ministry of Education has the lion's share of this particular budget, and of course there is some still key sectors like the Ministry of Sports, who have gotten additional of almost 50% of the allocation, and of course we have the Ministry of Defense there. We have the Ministry of Interior, and of course, just to give you some insight about the winners and the losers. And remember, this is a budget that has seen some sort of, reaction from Kenyans regarding its high number, the 4 trillion. And of course, a lot of questions have been asked about how will it be funded, and that is the big question. And of course, we invite your thoughts and comment on this particular budget, the 2024-2025 budget, even as we take count on what might be happening. And of course, it's a discussion that we'll be bringing you later on our broadcast tonight, and of course to bring you just up to speed with what to expect as far as this particular budget is concerned. Very key note to take home. Remember, the treasurer, that is Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, has said that for the next 1 year the government has freeze hiring. Very interesting how this turn of event will unfold. And remember, the government is seeking additional of 300 billion in revenue, that is collection, for this targeted financial year of 2024-2025. And of course, to help this, or rather to make this a reality, we have the finance bill of 2024 that, after this budget was read today in Parliament, it's now paved way for the implementation of the finance bill, a document that will actually lay down a roadmap for the collection of, or rather a roadmap that will aid in the collection of these additional taxes. And this is yet another bone of contention, a very hot debate in the lips of many Kenyans. So this is part 1 is done. We are waiting for the part 2 of the finance bill, which will be presented in Parliament next week for discussion and deliberation, now that we are done with the public participation stage. Now all eyes are on the Parliament, and it's something that will be very interesting to see how things will unfold, if the opinion and of course the counts of Kenyans will be taken into consideration. A big question there. However, remember, our reporters have been up and down to bring you up to speed with the latest, the world of politics. Now we are talking about business. As far as the matters finance is concerned, we have sports, and of course this is what to expect in the next 1 hour or so.
Tonight, the 4 trillion budget. Treasury CS Njuguna Ndung'u presents the 2024-2025 budget in Parliament as government freezes hiring. The give and take. The executive gets additional coin as Ministry of Education and Agriculture budget slashed. Also tonight, the rogue cop. The senior police officer who shot magistrate in Makadara is shot dead. Plus, Ruto tours Meru. President takes his development tour to Meru County, urges members of parliament to pass the finance bill of 2024.
This is KUTV Primetime News with Auma Evans.
Alright, Samuel Kelo is our sign language interpreter tonight. And of course, we invite your feedback and comments on this particular broadcast tonight, where we take a look at matters finance today, the big discussion of the day tonight. And you can talk to us on all of our social media platforms. We are coming to you live on YouTube at KUTV News Live. You can tweet me personally on my X at Auma Evans at KUTV_Kenya. Remember to use the hashtag State of the Nation, or if you like, Primetime News. All right, so let's begin our bulletin tonight, where during the public pronouncement of the budget highlights today, the Cabinet Secretary of National Treasurer and Economic Planning, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, emphasized that the government will be implementing and formulating long-term climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies to generate strong, resilient pathways. He highlighted the importance of climate action agenda and being informed by the need to restore the degraded ecosystem, including forest, rivers, and wetlands. Njuguna further stated that the government had intensified climate adaptation and mitigation efforts, focusing on decarbonizing the manufacturing, green energy, smart agriculture, e-mobility, and green building, all with the goal of achieving zero carbon emission by the year 2050.
I therefore urge all Kenyans to support the government's response to the ecosystem restoration that aims to grow 15 billion trees nationwide by the year 2030.
And still related to matters finance, now President William Ruto has urged members of parliament to make haste and pass the contentious finance bill of 2024. This will ensure service delivery to the people. Ruto spoke in Meru County, where he presided over the laying of the foundation stone for Meru maize millers, as James Baraka now reports.
As the entire nation directed their attention to the National Assembly for the reading of the 2024-2025 budget, President William Ruto today toured the mountain to oversee some development projects. The first in command has urged members of parliament to pass the 2024-2025 budget in order to ensure the delivery of services to the citizens.
Tafadhali harakisheni, pitisheni budget haraka haraka.
This comes amidst the campaign for one man, one vote, one shillings revenue sharing formula, spearheaded by the deputy president alongside opposition leaders in the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. Additionally, his visit comes just 3 days after his predecessor complained of frustrations from the Kenya Kwanza government, a silent war that dates back to Kenya's 2022 succession race. However, the deputy president's silence on the issue in the presence of his boss seemingly elicits concerns as to whether the agenda push is really genuine or tribal politics as alleged.
Sisi zote kazi yetu ni kumsaidia rais wetu ndio apange mikakati ya maendeleo katika Jamhuri ya Kenya. Na hasa tunajivunia hapa katika kaunti hii yetu ya Meru, rais anaendelea kututembelea tukiwa tunampenda.
Nevertheless, the visit benefited some parts of the Mount Kenya region, specifically Meru County, with the president laying the foundation stone for the Meru Maziwa Millers Limited in Matungu, South Imenti.
Na nimekuja hapa na shilingi milioni 100 ya kusaidia ujenzi wa dairy hii ili wetu waweze kupata chakula ya ng'ombe kwa bei nafuu. Hiyo program ya housing by next year itakuwa inaajiri vijana 1,300. Many of those people who will be working in our housing plan come from colleges like Mitungu.
President Ruto's bold step to tour the region amidst the alleged threats to foment a rebellion against his Kenya Kwanza government from the so-called the Big Two of the Mount Kenya region is seen as an attempt to calm the restive region.
Si tulikubaliana mambo ni bottom up? Ama tulikubaliana aje?
James Baraka, KUTV News.
All right, politics aside, now let's focus on agriculture. In a bid to double milk production within the next 3 years, the government has put in place measures to increase milk production from the current 5 billion liters to 11 billion liters per year by the end of the year 2027. This story was produced by Ernest Karani.
The government is now working towards increasing milk production in the country from the current 5 billion litres to 11 billion litres annually by 2027. This is according to the Agriculture and Livestock Development Cabinet Secretary Mithika Linturi. Linturi, who was speaking to tea farmers at the Rukuriri Tea Factory in Embu, outlined a two-pronged approach aimed at transforming the dairy sector. The plan involves providing farmers with sex semen to ensure enhanced herd growth and offering credit to provide enough nutritious feeds for dairy animals.
Hiyo mbegu nawaambia sex semen ambayo ukiweka ni ndama. Inauzangu hawa na watu wengine huko ni shilingi 7,000 mpaka 8,000. Na hizo ni pesa mingi sana kwa mkulima. Kwa hivyo nawaambia, Julai iliyopita rais aliniambia nifanye kazi usiku na mchana, nihakikishe nimeleta mbegu kwa wakulima na bei nafuu.
Under the semen subsidy program, farmers will be able to acquire sex semen that guarantees heifer births at a cost of Kenya shillings 2,900 per insemination, significantly lower than the current market rate of Kenya shillings 7,000 to Kenya shillings 9,000.
As minister representative of government in the whole electoral process is to ensure that the ground is fair for everyone. Ndio tukakubaliana hii kura lazima uwe tofauti kwa kura zile zingine zote zimepigwa katika taifa letu la Kenya, na hasa kwa wakulima wa majani chai.
On his part, the Kenya Tea Development Agency National Chairman Enos Njeru urged the government to exempt all taxes on tea packaging materials. According to Njeru, these taxes hinder value addition in the tea sector and slow down domestic tea sales.
Na niseme wakati aliingilia Bwana CS na kusalute, hii maneno uliweza kuyatatua na sekta, wakurugenzi wote wakakuwa waturifu, wakakubali yale ambayo umeweka, na hadi wa leo mpaka watu wa IBC wale wakurugenzi wote wako hapa, tuko ngangari na tuko na imani ya kwamba ile election ambayo inakuja
The government's ambitious plan to double milk production includes initiatives for herd growth, feed production support, and agricultural sector reforms. Brian Auma, KUTV.
Right, that story takes us to our first break here on KUTV Primetime News. Remember, plenty more to follow after the break. See you now.
Kaunti maarufu kwa kuzalisha maziwa na ukuzaji wa majani chai. Pia, serikali ya kaunti inawahimiza wakulima kukumbatia mitindo mingine ya kilimo kuzidisha mapato.
Kama kuna kikundi moja inafanya biashara ya kuuza kuku, hao pia tumewafadhili kuwafunza jinsi ya kuhandle zile kuku kwa sababu wanaleta kwa wingi.
Haya yote tunakuletea katika Boresha Kilimo, toleo la kaunti ya Bomet.
Kilimo ni nguzo kubwa kwa ujenzi wa taifa.
Maelfu na maelfu ya wahamiaji wakiwa na watoto kutoka nchi za Amerika ya Kati wanaendelea kuwasili kwenye mpaka kati ya Marekani na Mexico.
The folks are going. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ni habari kutoka pembe zote duniani.
Pepo pasi vuguvugu. Pepo pa ni idea.
Sazidi ananyonya, hanyonyi vizuri, anakuwa hayuko comfortable.
Jeshi la Jamhuri ya Kidemokrasia ya Kongo linapambana na waasi wa ADF.
Kwa sasa wanatoa wito kwa mashirika, makampuni na vile vituo vya uchukuzi.
Mambo mengi yatakwenda kama yalivyopangwa.
Hapa ni kuna mmoja wa viongozi wa chama cha wavuvi katika eneo hili.
Zaidi tunajaribu kuwapa chanjo ili ina boost ama inanyanyua kinga ya mwili, ndio inaenda kupelekea kupambana na virusi.
Ni Duniani Leo, Jumatatu mpaka Ijumaa, moja kwa moja kutoka VOA Swahili, Washington DC.
Are you an aspiring media practitioner, a graduate, or you just want to advance your skills in television production? Then welcome to Kenyatta University, where education meets innovation. KUTV, the premier university television station in Kenya, is now offering short courses in TV studio, field technical operations, and video editing. Through these courses, you will acquire hands-on skills on camera operations, media production, lighting techniques, audiovisual editing, and sound and visual control, and how to operate key equipment in modern TV control room. Enroll today at KUTV and discover your full potential in cutting-edge TV broadcasting. Graduates of these courses will receive professional certificates. For more information, visit our offices at KUTV Studios or call us on 020-870-4252 or 020-870-4255 or SMS us on 0739-110-544. KUTV, a new experience.
Tunachimba hadi mizizi kuletea yanayojiri.
So mimi naomba tu serikali yetu ya Mungu, jibarikiwe na Mungu, iweze kuteremsha bei ya mafuta.
Yanayokukumba tuna maizi, tunakutetea sisiri. Kwa kweli ni speciali tukikupambia makala ya mwanamke mwake. Utasema hupendi mizizi ya habari. Nami Caroline.
From the hospital corridors, we bring you experts to discuss issues affecting your health, from diet to mental health. The familiar and the ignored are both put into perspective. We then dive into the environment and look at the effects of climate change and its solutions. Join me, Mutegi K. Martin, every Friday at 9 p.m. as we learn on how to better our health while taking care of our environment. Only on KUTV.
Access to knowledge. Solution to unanswered questions.
Pursuing your rights and repossessing your property, intellectual or material.
This and more only on Law
Get ready to kickstart your day with the most exciting morning show around. Tune in to our dynamic and entertaining program where we keep you informed, engaged, and entertained from the moment you wake up.
From breaking news and current events to music, fun, and out of the ordinary stories, we've got you covered with a mix of interviews, games, and special segments. You never know what's in store.
Join us every Monday morning
and Tuesday morning
for a fun and fascinating way to start your day.
Don't miss out on the action.
Tune in now and experience the excitement for yourself.
Only on KUTV Rise Today from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Start your day
with us.
You are watching KUTV Primetime News with Auma Evans.
Right, welcome back and let's continue. Now, the executive is among the big winners of the 2024-2025 budget alongside the Ministry of Education. And as Edward Nyamu explains, the office of the president and that of his deputy will receive an additional coin of up to the tune of 5.1 billion and 4.8 billion respectively. Take a look.
The Office of the President received an additional allocation, with it receiving 5.1 billion and with that of the Deputy President receiving a share of 4.8 billion. This is against President Ruto's sentiment who stated that he is going to slash his budget. Counties received an increase in its allocation, with it being given 400.1 billion from 385 billion, which was allocated in the financial year 2023-2024. Parliament also received an increase where they got 44.6 billion and upward from 40.7 billion. Judiciary recorded an increase where it got 24.6 billion, recording an upward trajectory from 22.8 billion. The economy is expected to remain vibrant in 2024, growing by 5.5%, supported by a robust service sector, strong performance in agriculture, and a decline in global commodities prices that is expected to reduce the cost of production. With the Equalization Fund receiving 8 billion, the Consolidated Funds Services estimated allocation is up from the present allocation of 1.13 trillion from 1.24 trillion. The National Treasury intends to provide an extra 3.53 billion to the Equalization Fund, partial payment of arrears to the Equalization Fund. National Security will receive 219.4 billion from 199.3 billion. Public Administration and International Relations, which include the Office of the President, receiving 344.4 billion from 299.33 billion. Edward Nyamu, KUTV, Nairobi.
All right, now that discussion, rather that story by Edward Nyamu now sets the stage for the discussion about this particular, discussion about the budget, the 2024-2025 budget that was read today in Parliament by Cabinet Secretary from, Treasury and Finance Planning, that is Professor Njuguna Ndungu, on this particular day. And remember, this is a historic budget, the 4 trillion. And that is the big question that many people are asking. Is this particular budget ambitious? And of course, we'll be getting into nitty-gritty of this. Remember, we have the winners and the losers. And when we take a look at some key sectors that will be taking a bite out of this, finance, or rather the budget of 2024-2025. I'm talking about sectors like the communication sector, where there is some proposals that when the finance bill of 2024 is, passed the way it is without some amendment, then that means that this sector will actually receive a big hit as far as this particular, finance bill is concerned. We have the proposed 2.5 motor vehicle taxation. We have the betting funds the betting farms and lottery that will also be taking a bite of this particular finance bill of 2024. In regard now to the budget that was read today in Parliament, we have the manufacturers of the beverage, and this in particular include alcohol. Remember, today the CS said that alcohol will be taxed based on the content of the alcohol level. And of course, a key instrument, or rather a takeaway note, is that government has freeze hiring of for the next 1 year. This is just in line to try and reduce some unnecessary expenditure, and this is something that the government is very keen in regard to this particular this budget of the 2024-2025. And of course, to help me unpack this particular discussion that will be taking a look at even as we take toll on what is, who are the winners and of course the losers. Remember, we have seen some very key sectors like the Ministry of Education getting the lion's share of this particular budget. We have the executive that will also, be adding a few coins on top of what, of course, they had been allocated in the finance bill, or rather in the budget of the 2023-2024. And of course, in line with this, we have the Ministry of Defense who have, seen their budget actually, increase in same with the Ministry of Interior. And this is a discussion that many people will be keen to see, and even we are asking about the priorities. Which sector do you think should have been allocated more of this, the budget? And of course, to help us unpack this discussion is CPA Cornelius Ngetich. Thank you so much for making time. Well, this particular budget of 2024-2025, a historic one, as they say. And when you look at, the proposed budget, the 4 trillion, are we simply living out of your means?
Thank you.
Use this. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Evans, for having me. And yes, this budget is fairly ambitious. I think it is. It has been a long journey coming. We are at a point as a country where we are at optimal taxation. Any further increase is really hurting the economy, is hurting the mwananchi. And the government is at pains. It has to provide the services, and it has to somehow mobilize revenue. So it's an ambitious budget, but they don't have much wiggle room. Somehow it has to be done. Yeah.
Well, let me take you back to at least 2 financial years. We had the 2.4 trillion budget. That was a record at that particular time. Then we had 3.7 trillion, the first financial budget of the Kenya Kwanza administration. Now we have 4 trillion. Well, when you look at the trajectory and of course the trend that you're following, then as a Kenyan who is very keen on this matters finance and how it actually affect Kenyans in regard to tax collection and all this, into when you put into fact all these the parameters that bring up matters finance and the economy, then you begin to wonder about this trajectory. Well, are we really, chewing a lot that we can, biting a lot that we can chew as far as a nation is concerned? And even when you look at the revenue target, the projection that we set for ourselves as a nation, are they really realistic?
So, for almost the last 10 years, we have always attained
the mic. You forgot.
For almost the last 10 years,
yes.
We are, on average, we have always, as a country, attained 93% of the targeted revenue collection. What this means, therefore, is that it should be, form a basis for decision making. And whenever on an annual basis we hear about these budgets and we hear again these new targets, definitely then it means we are going way ahead. You see, our economy is growing at a rate of, last year was at 5.6%, but budget growth is much higher than that. And then definitely the question is, where do we expect these funds to come from? Because the economy is growing at a much lower rate. And that's where we end up having very interesting revenue-raising proposals, which tend to hurt us as an economy, tend to hurt Kenyans in their pockets. You see, in the previous year, last year, the first KK budget, the focus was more in what we call direct tax, the income taxes. This year we are looking more at what we call indirect tax. So last year it quote unquote it attacked the income of our incomes and reduced the disposable income. So once that happened, then this year you have small amounts to utilize to meet your personal expenses, to meet your expenditure at home. And then now this year, the prices of goods are going to go up. So when you talk of indirect taxes, these are VAT, these are excise duties, these are all these things we are seeing being introduced. And remember last year, your disposable income went down because of housing levy, because of revised pay rate, revised corporation tax. And then now this year, you have goods, prices of goods going up because you are introducing eco levy, plastics. You use plastic to package a lot of goods, import levy and all that. So with that, then the reduced disposable income last year, this year we are seeing increase in cost of prices of goods. It only means therefore that, reduction in savings, inability for us to meet our day-to-day expenses, our budgets at home, it can only point to a difficult time ahead.
All right. And talking about difficult times ahead, well, from expert point of view, when you look at the proposed, of course, taxation, we have the 16% VAT on bread, we have 25% on, crude and, cooking oil, that if this proposed finance bill of 2024 sees the light of the day, then that means the price of basic essentials commodities will actually hike. And it raises a very important question as far as this particular discussion is concerned. Can you, achieve the projected, of course, revenue that the government wants to collect in this particular financial year of 2024-2025 through overtaxation? How does it work?
So, as I mentioned earlier, records data shows in the last 10 years, our average collection has been at 93%. I remember in those 10 years, things have seemed to be good or better than today. At least we have always felt the direction was not in the best way, but things were somehow better. And now we are today where things are really hard. Businesses are closing.
All right.
People are losing jobs. There are layoffs all over. All this affects the revenues because those people who have lost jobs there is no longer pay tax. So there's lots of tax. Companies closing down or shifting businesses from this country to other countries, that's lots of tax. So what it therefore means is that at best, most probably will achieve 93% as historical average shows. However, it could only mean then things could look tighter. We may not attain even at 93%. It could come lower. And what that means to our budget is that there will be a deficit. There will be increased a wider deficit because the expenditures, unfortunately, most of the time tend to go up as we start seeing the supplementary budgets along the way. Looking back at supplementary budget that was just tabled in Parliament a few weeks ago for the financial year that is ending, we have seen the budget grown actually to 3.88 of last year's budget. So the expenditure side keeps increasing, and on the other side, the revenue mobilization taxes keep shrinking. We don't attain 100% of our tax, our revenue collection targets. So what it means is that the deficit in between keeps widening, and this is where we end up now with the loans, borrowings. The government tends to borrow to meet its objective. And what this means is that you are just pushing the problem down the road. You are pushing the problem down the road.
All right.
Because you keep borrowing, next year again we'll have interest and all that. And if you look at today's budget, CFS, what we call Consolidated Fund Services, is among the leading. It's the second one after the executive at 30.4. 1.2 trillion just to pay. It's Consolidated Fund Services is meant for interest repayment, principal loan repayment, and pension.
All right.
Out of this 1.2 trillion, only for pension is 200 billion thereabout. The other trillion is for loan.
All right.
So it's a huge task ahead.
All right. And you've talked about the deficit of which stands at above 7 billion in this particular that we owe. And of course, this is something that we learn from the history. We know that I'm sure the government knows where to tighten the belt, where to loosen a little bit, where to tilt the focus and try to balance in as much as you can see. So a quick study. So if you know that by overtaxation, maybe you might force some investors out of business, and in that case out of the country, then that means during your revenue target and trajectory, that means there is this particular deficit. You have talked about the collection at 93%, then that means there is 7% that is lost somewhere. Well, is it something that government should actually take into consideration before, even during the planning and even before the planning of any budget, given the fact that the parameters are there, the indications, but instead of focusing on the gaps, we see an onward trajectory. So, from expert again, so how does it, balance all these aspects?
In my view, what should happen, I think we need to start looking at the budget making process as a whole. It's a legal process which takes on for the whole year, starting from around July, August. Upon approval of these estimates, we start the cycle for the coming year.
All right.
And the question then is, do we, they say you cut cloth as per your size. Basically, we need to start living within our means. And how can we achieve that? Should we consider legally to start looking at our laws and start from a revenue perspective and say how much revenue can we raise as a country? Right now, total revenue projected is at 3.34 trillion. And if we were to do 93% as per historical average on that, that could come slightly lower. So perhaps if we had started with that number and say we can afford to raise from history 3 trillion, what can this 3 trillion finance? Where we are right now as a country is that we start with the estimates of expenditure, then we think of how to finance. So by July, August, the government treasury seeks estimates from the departments and the ministries. They collect estimates for expenditure. The fundraising, tax revenue measures come a bit later in the process. And I think then begs the question, should we now start considering as a country our budget making process so that we start looking at our ability to finance first in terms of tax before, and we look at this is what we can afford as a country. As a ministry, you have this much to plan yourself with. These are the projects you are leaving. These are the projects you are taking according to our ability to finance.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, cutting your coat according to your size. That is very important at this particular moment. And of course, a question that will circulate is about whose budget is this? Because you have taken us through the budget making process where it begins immediately during the implementation of the first, as early as July. That's good. Well, when you make budget, according to my understanding, it's very critical to take the input of every key stakeholders. Well, for yourself, you're an accountant, of course, with a vast experience in this particular field. But does your opinion matter in this budget making process, especially when it comes to austerity measures?
So someone said public finance is what they call labor of love. We don't expect immediate results, and the logic is it's the debts we are paying are not necessarily from the current administration. They're historical. They could be even beyond 20 years some of the debts because the tenures for government debts are quite long, up to 50 years. So what this means, therefore, is even the current administration finds itself in a very strange position. They have their better agenda. They want, when they campaign on a platform, but you find yourself in a space where you have debts to pay, you have obligations to meet, which the country has committed to from previous projects, and you can't run away from those obligations. So with the, you already have staff wage bill taking 1.2 trillion. You have the obligations arising out of historical debt. By the time you start looking at your own agenda as an administration, you have very small wiggle room, very small space to play with. And that's why you now see going full throttle to come up with all manner of taxes to fundraise, to fund their projects before their term comes to an end.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now let's take a look at now the budget allocation from each sector. Of course, the Ministry of Education has the largest share, the lion's share of this particular budget of 650 billion for this particular one. Well, my worry is every financial year, the last financial year, the Ministry of Education got at around 620 something billion, but the problem still persists. Now, is it the collection or the allocation? Because now this is somewhere that we must really, dig deeper, because in as much as you get the lion's share, but are they prudent? Will we actually, see that the money allocated to the ministry will actually, the ripple effect will be reflected in these learners? Because you live in this country and we have seen what is happening. Many institutions are deep down into cash crunch crisis. We had the junior secondary schools intern teachers demonstrating, wanting to be, observe permanent and under pensionable terms. Yes, we have seen some budget being allocated, but do you think maybe this will be the silver bullet that the country has been lacking as far as solving this education crisis is concerned?
So let me say this. For the Ministries of Education and Ministry of Health, the main drivers for their huge allocations is most of the time the human resource. These are ministries that are very highly human resource intensive. And specifically Ministry of Education, you look at that allocation, around 75% goes to TSC. What that means, therefore, is that it goes to salary increments as per the CBS that are in place, the collective bargaining agreements, and also for the recent court ruling where the court said the interns teachers should actually enjoy equal terms like the rest of the teachers. Previously, when how this whole thing came about, the issue of intern teachers was the government was being smart, so to say, in managing wage bill, which is a huge expense line in the government expenditure. So they, unfortunately, in being smart to manage the wage bill, the courts stated that it was being unfair because these are the same people doing the same work, kind of job. They are equally qualified. They are all graduates. But you are putting someone on contract for 1 or 2 years, whereas another person same work on permanent and pensionable terms. So the court found that unfair. The government may not have had intention to be unfair, but the whole driver was the budget. They didn't have the resources, or the resources are not enough, the resources are finite, and we still need more teachers. Even the ones they are on internship are not enough to support the CBC program, the junior high school.
Okay.
So I think it's a catch-22 scenario for the planners in government, where the huge takers of the budget are not necessarily investments in anything else but human resource. And at some point, even back in the day, the government extended or increased the retirement age to 60 years. But now, it has caught up with the government. They can no longer increase. Now all these people have to go on retirement. Okay. And it's a huge expense in pension. And that's where we see all these allocation being driven by mostly by wage bill.
All right. And now the executive has also been allocated, and this is, additional, and we are talking about now the winners and the losers. Executive and the office of the president has been allocated 5.1 billion. The office of his deputy, that is 4.8 billion. We have the office of prime CS, that is 1.1 billion. State House has 9.4 billion. Parliament, of course, got additional, and now their figure stands at 4.4 billion. When you take a look at the priority areas, where should we actually base our priorities when it comes to budget allocation? Do we really need these figures for the office of the president, the deputy president, and all this? Where should we base our priorities as a nation?
So as a nation, there are more pressing priorities, I must say. However, given the budgeting challenge that I mentioned earlier, where we tend to submit our expenditure estimates before we look at the revenue, it puts us at a difficult place. This is the executive arm. They will convince, or we will want to believe they are right. And once they share their estimates, expenditure estimates, chances are most of the estimates will always find a way they will go through. And this is opposed to a situation where we had come up with our ability to finance and told them, State House, we can only afford to give you 2 billion, for example. In that case, it would be an open and shut discussion. But from a point where they have a lot of projects, the State House, they say, was built by the colonialists, or it was renovated 50 years ago, so to say, and it now needs to be modernized, such and such things. Investment projects which have been undergoing or ongoing, and they have to be concluded. You have all these international obligations in place, the peace treaties in South Sudan, and what have you. All this, so long as the process of budgeting starts from expenditure, I think somehow we will always find a way of justifying our expenses.
All right. Now, going by the trajectory, we have seen the figures keep on rising each financial year. Well, the worry is now the budget stands at 4 trillion. Who knows about the next financial year? That is a big question, because it's a matter of wait and see how the event will unfold. Well, we are talking about living within our means, and of course, even the Treasury today say that there are some of the austerity measures, like including freezing hiring, as one way of trying to limit and expenditures from different state departments. That's fair enough, but where should the pendulums first settle? Because I believe if you want to talk about the discussion about austerity measures, then we must lead by example. So when you look at these budgets, what are some of the unnecessary allocations that maybe will have reduced so that we can ease the burden on Kenyans?
Going through the budgets, it's so hard to place a finger and say this may not be unnecessary. But I think what needs to really come out and we need to see a lot of focus. I would love to see a lot of focus by the government is I've seen priority areas where they have mentioned increasing productive areas with a focus on specific areas in agriculture. And I think if we could focus as a nation in baking a bigger cake, a much bigger pie, so that when it comes to taxation, it doesn't hit us so much. I think would make a lot of sense. Injecting more resources. I think we have seen the continued putting, government has put money, 10 billion in the fertilizer subsidy. They're coming up with, they're focusing on edible oils, supporting farmers by retram, all that. At the end of the day, if this is successful, because some of us, when we grew up, these things were actually working. Okay. There were areas that were known to grow by retram. There were areas that we used to grow sunflower. But along the way, those things disappeared. There was a failure in the system. And looking at the CS today, speaking to a revitalization of those institutions, hopefully can make the economy and increase the cake in terms of increasing employment and production in the economy.
Even as we wind this particular discussion, because this I'll tie it and it will serve as your closing remark. Well, let's now switch focus to finance bill. Well, we have key, and this is very key, commodities that the government is planning to, impose a tax on it. The 16% on bread. We have 25% on crude oil, and of course, if this see the light of the day, then these particular two areas are very critical to ordinary mwananchi. So first of all, let me get your count on why will government tax essential commodities that majority of Kenyans depend on that? What is the logic? What is the wisdom behind this, even as we close?
Honestly, I wouldn't say I see any wisdom. I think it's all about harmonization. They are saying they are bringing more products to be standardized under one regime rate. But I think it's unfair because then it's pushing the ordinary Kenyan to the brink. And hopefully, as the committee in Parliament retreats to do their report, they actually listen to what Kenyans said. Okay. Hopefully they will remove, because the one on edible oils also will really mess Kenyans a lot, because everything will rise in terms of the food basket. All right. And hopefully they will listen to us and submissions that many Kenyans made and do away with those.
All right. We have really, run out of time, and the director is on my ears. So we are taking a very short break, but thank you so much. That is CPA Cornelius Ngetich. Asante sana for making time to give us insight on this budget 2024-2025. Your time is appreciated. Asante sana.
Thanks.
All right, so we are taking a very short break. When we come back, we'll be diving into motorsport. See you.
From the hospital corridors, we bring you experts to discuss issues affecting your health, from diet to mental health. The familiar and the ignored are both put into perspective. We then dive into the environment and look at the effects of climate change and its solutions. Join me, Mutegi K. Martin, every Friday at 9 p.m. as we learn on how to better our health while taking care of our environment. Only on KUTV. are watching KUTV Primetime News with Auma Evans.
Right, welcome back, and now it's time to dive into matters. All right, so sorry for that. I thought maybe we were going to sports, but now let's take a look at some other stories. Now, Treasury CS Njuguna Ndung'u today presented in Parliament a historic 4.0 trillion budget for the year 2024-2025. While the budget is the first one for Kenya, also a historic, it will be a revenue target and tax measures by the government in an effort to fund the budget.
In the fashion of a 60-year-long tradition, Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u was today the spotlight of the country. All eyes stuck on him as he led the procession to Parliament for the annual budget reading tradition. On his hand, the trademark black briefcase embroidered by the coat of arms. However, what was not tradition was the unprecedented 4.0 trillion budget read by Ndung'u. Whereas the budget figure is a first one for Kenya, also unprecedented are the revenue targets and tax measures proposed by the government in a bid to close down the gaping deficit and cut down on external borrowing. Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u, while delivering his budget speech at the National Assembly, made clear on the government's plan to step up on revenue collection by over 18% in the financial year 2024-2025.
Mr. Speaker, the year 2024-2025 marks the beginning of these reforms through the proposed amendments in various tax laws contained in the Finance Bill 2024.
Ndung'u read with his head high the confirmation of a contentious draft of taxes in the Finance Bill, namely the eco-levy tax on manufacturing, motor vehicle tax capped at 2.5% of vehicle value, increase of excise duty for betting services to 20%, the contentious hike of money transfer services by 5 to 20%, and increase of excise duty on alcoholic beverages.
Mr. Speaker, to expand the tax base and make our country self-reliant, I propose to introduce an annual motor vehicle tax at the rate of 2.5%, the value of the vehicle, subject to minimum amount of Kenya shillings 5,000.
The budget financial in the shape of Finance Bill 2024-2025 resumes debate next week as the Finance Committee is expected to table its report on Tuesday. Munaneweru, KUTV.
Now, a portion of Kenyans feel gloomy about the likelihood that the nation's budget forecast will solve important issues impacting the economy. They say they hope that in order to boost the economy and lessen the burden of taxpayers, the government will give priority to projects in businesses, agriculture, stalled projects, and managing foreign debt.
Naweza sema budget ya leo imenishangaza sana kwa sababu President alituambia ya kwamba yeye anaongoza kama mfano, ya kwamba yeye atakata cost tuishi within our means, lakini tunaona ofisi yake imewekewa pesa mingi sana 5.1 billion, na ofisi ya Gachagua imewekewa 4.8, na bado tunaona DP anatembea na KQ. Sasa tunashangaa hii pesa yote mbona isiwekwe tipo mwananchi wa kawaida ndio aweze kusaidika.
Tangu sahi biashara, hata ukiangalia customer flow ya customer si kama vile kitambo. Flow ya customer imekuwa chini sana kwa sababu wakati bajeti inaongezwa hivyo, ile pesa labda mtu angesema anataka kununua kitu hapa kake, inabidi sasa anaanza kuipangia mipango mingine.
Just a few moments after the Cabinet Secretary for Finance, Njuguna Ndung'u, presented the record high budget reading before Parliament buildings, one thing remains clear from leaders of all political divides and also Kenyans, and this is a call to the executive to cut on the expenditure and find alternative means of raising revenue to finance the budget. Theo Masharia for KUTV.
Now, the national beach volleyball team continued to intensify its training at the Pride Inn Hotel in Mombasa for the preparation of the 2024 Confederation of African Volleyball Continental Cup and Paralympic Games qualifiers scheduled for June 18th to 23rd in Martil, Morocco. The team of 8 comprised of 4 men and 4 female team from Kenya, different volleyball federation club leagues, and they are all polishing their tactical skills as they seek to improve in their performance at the Africa Games in Accra, Ghana, when they crash out in the quarterfinals in March 2024. The team leaves for Morocco on June 18th in time for the June 20th serve out. Alright, that's all we had for you tonight. Many thanks for the men and women behind the production, and of course for you, our esteemed viewers, for always keeping us a company in the last 1 hour also. My good name is Auma. Even Samuel Kelo has been our sign language interpreter tonight. Until next time, do have a lovely night and enjoy the rest of your night.